Okay, I've ensured that we have our fittings here, everything to install the Tank Booster Pro. Boy, this is nifty. I need one of these at my house. Whew, what a workout. And if you plumb with a smile, it makes for a better day. Hi, I'm David with We Plumb. I'm a master plumber and I've been plumbing for 35 years. Today we're at a customer's house whose complaint has been running out of hot water. So instead of purchasing a new water heater for the customer, with today's economy and the cost of everything, we're going to install the Tank Booster Pro to increase the capacity of the hot water. So the reasons you may be running out of hot water more frequently than normal is if you have guests coming in from out of town, family, what have you. Before we get started with the install, the most important thing to do is make sure you locate where your power shutoff is, because we do have an electric heater here, and also where your main water shutoff is to the house. So let's go ahead and get started. On this one here, you see we have a disconnect box. It's also marked W/H, and that's for water heater. So go ahead and pull this up, and on this one here we have a pull-out design. There you go. We now know that power is off to the water heater. Go ahead and set that back up here so we don't lose it. If you don't have a main disconnect next to your water heater, you need to find the breaker panel, and in that breaker panel you're going to find a 30-amp breaker, and it should be marked water heater to turn the power off to the water heater. Okay, now that we found the main power source to the water heater, we need to go find the main shutoff for the water. Let's go. Okay, here we are at the main water shutoff, and right now we're going to turn the water off to the house. This being the cabin out in the woods, the main shutoff is out here. On some of your newer houses, they'll actually by code have the main shutoff next to your water heater, because that's where you want your water main coming into your first fixture, and that would be the water heater. Also, shutoffs can be found in crawl spaces. Sometimes on some older houses, you don't even have shutoffs. You have to turn it off at the water meter. So anyway, here we go. Let's turn the water off. If you look down in here, we have PVC ball valve. We're going to go ahead and we're going to turn it. Now you have to be careful with these. Sometimes they're tough and they haven't been turned for a while. This one is a clockwise motion. And there you go. All right, now that we've shut the main water off, let's proceed into the house and drain the water down to make sure when we're doing our install, we're not flooding everything out. Normally to drain down a water heater, you use a garden hose at the boiler drain at the bottom. But since the tub spout is lower in this application than the actual outlet of the water heater, we're just going to drain it at the tub. All right, now I'm ready to do the install. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the box and see what we have in here and make sure we have all our parts and that's going to be needed to actually make the install go smoothly. Here we have our Tank Booster Pro, sort of a mixing valve. We have a check valve on the cold inlet, check valve on the hot outlet, so water doesn't back up and mix at that point. Anyways, you can see there's an arrow here. We also have our adapters to make sure we can adapt to the water heater. Make sure these thread on nice and smooth. All right, nice. It's threading on. Should not be a problem. All right, let's see what other goodies we have here in the box. All right, here we go. Gasket for there. This is our gauge. That's going to go on top of there. Boom, boom. Gauge for there. All right, so that's your temperature. Nice. This. Let's see, what else? Bypass tube. We have that. Okay, so here we go. I need to get cutting, and so let's begin. We're going to be cutting on CPVC today, so what we need to ensure is that we have a ratchet cutter, because CPVC can sometimes be brittle, and what we don't want to do is crack and split the pipe. So we're going to go ahead and cut the pipe. We're going to take our time and be leisure. But before we get started, paper towels for any excess overflow. This looks like a good spot. So just squeeze gently. Ooh, nice. Booyah. Remember, when you're cutting CPVC with ratchet cutters, kind of spin it and squeeze gingerly, because you do not want to split the pipe. And there we go, we're disconnected. Now, to remove the actual male adapters into the top of the heater so we can install our dielectric or galvanized nipples. In plumbing, there's a lot of different terminologies depending on what region of the country you live in. Anyway, get my tongue and groove pliers here, because these are really what these type of pliers are called. And we're going to go ahead and back out. That's the cold side. Wow, look at that. There we go. Now that we've balanced it out. All right, next step. Let's get our nipples that the tank booster is going to attach to. Today I have 2 galvanized nipples. They consider these dielectric because of the plastic that's on the inside of them. And whenever you're attaching 2 dissimilar metals, it can cause something called electrolysis. So we're going to head and use these dielectric unions to make sure we prevent that. So what we want to do is get some Teflon tape. Really it's a plumber's preference. You can use Teflon tape or you can use plumber's pipe dope or what have you. In this instance, since we're going metal to metal, the Teflon should be sufficient enough. Sometimes when you're putting plastic and metal fittings together, you don't want to use a Teflon because it acts as a spacer and can crack your fitting. A good 6-7 wraps. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then go ahead and squeeze that around to ensure that it's within the threads. The other side, go ahead and repeat process. Make sure when you're wrapping your Teflon tape that you're wrapping in the direction you're actually going to be turning and tightening into. If you don't, it'll actually unravel the Teflon and you have a leak. All right, very simple clockwise rotation. So this is our adapter that the actual booster mixing valve is going to mix to. We've already got the Teflon on there. We don't need the washer, so let's proceed. The actual mixing part in the booster will go on the hot side of this insulation on the water heater. Notice here's your check valve, and the washer we have has a screen in it to keep any debris from going into the mixing valve and clogging it up. All right, let's get our threads started. Here we go. And let's go ahead and snug this down. All right. For now, we're just going to snug that and hand tighten it in case I need to have any movement or play. We don't tear up the rubber gasket that's in there to complete our seal. Okay, next part, cold side. Here's our cold side T that goes for the bypass to go over to the hot side for our mixing purposes. As you can see, there's an arrow as well for the inlet, direction of flow. All right, that looks good to me. All right, next step, bypass. Tank Booster Pro provides you with your bypass. Here we are, we have a rubber gasket with a screen on it for debris. Rubber gasket on the Tank Booster Pro side. Here we go. So, before completely tightening, let's make sure everything's fitting and lining up. Oh, that looks great. All right. Go ahead and hand tighten everything, snug it up, and voila, there you have the bypass actually put on now. So basically what's going to happen is once we reattach everything, the cold water is going to come from here, come into the tank booster, and it's going to mix with the hot after the heater's been set to a temperature of 140, and then it's going to temper the water down to anti-scalding temperature between 120 and 125. Tank Booster Pro comes with a temperature gauge so you know where your temperature is actually coming out at. So let's go ahead and install this. Boom, boom, boom. Now we're just going to snug it up. Everything right now is just a snug up point. That way we can get everything installed correctly and then go ahead and come back and really tighten everything down. All right, so now we have our temperature gauge on. Next, Most of your electric water heaters or gas water heaters come with the homeowner shut-off right above them. So if you follow me down here, this is going to be our cold side inlet. Now, considering that these are flexible, I'm going to go ahead and form this up to what I feel is best. Since we are using CPVC, the less stress we put on this pipe, the better. So, go ahead and line it up, make it level. The shutoff valve, we don't want it up, well, we can have it on the top or bottom. Okay, now on the inlet side of the SharkBite fitting, they go about 1.25 inches deep. So before installing, you can look in, find the stop point, which is this lip here, if you can see it, the brass. Measure it with our finger, which will be right about here at this point. That way it gives me a good idea where to cut this so there's no tension. So anyway, let's go ahead and mark this to where it lines up and there's no tension on the CPVC. Let's do it right about here. I feel comfortable with that. Let's go ahead and move this out of the way. Dun, dun, dun. Again, remember when cutting CPVC, kind of move the snap cutters back and forth a little to get a little slicing in there, and then slowly cut it off. Now, since we are using the SharkBite fitting, what we need to make sure of, and on CPVC you normally won't have it, is that we have no burrs or debris. Well, there's a little roughness right here. So let's go ahead and take our deburring tool, look for your 3/4, stick it on and let's clean it up a little. That way it makes for a good insertion and that the fitting will not be damaged in any way. And we have a great seal. And you want to do that for CPVC and copper or whatever pipe you might be using. Based off of SharkBite's website, for 3/4 inch pipe, you need to have 1.25 inches of pipe fully inserted into the SharkBite fitting to ensure proper sealant. So we're going to go ahead and mark 1.25 inches right there. So here's our mark, 1.25 inches. Going to go ahead and push in. Boom, voila. We are now officially seated into the fitting. Go ahead and turn this side off. All right, now we need to proceed to the hot side. Come down here, SharkBite fitting. Make sure our gasket is in place to ensure that we have no leaks. And we're going to proceed to attach this to the hot side outgoing flow. All right, so again, let's go ahead and make our adjustments. Remember, I left enough pipe because we have really no idea where these are going to attach to. Get the tension right about here. I'll give it a little bit more. Right about here is where we want to cut the pipe. Spin that out of the way. See, not tightened down so I can spin it out of the way easily. Nice and slow. There we go. Nice. All right, so we're going to come over here and measure our 1.25 inches. And I'm going to double check it. Boom. Right there. And a little notch right there. Next, we are going to take the deburring tool. Repeat the process. And there we go. Easy, easy. So typically when snugging up things, you want to use 2 opposing wrenches to give you so you don't twist things off. All right, here we go. Since these are brass fittings, we're going to use a pair of adjustables. Now you don't have to Superman this. Remember, there's only a rubber gasket in there. But you just want to get it snug. And then when we get to turn the water on, we'll go ahead and double check, make sure that everything's tightened securely. Okay, well there we go. So let's go ahead and go back outside and let's turn the water back onto the house. When we do turn the water back on the house, it's very important is that we get all the air out of the tank. Because if you turn the power back on with air in the tank, you're going to dry fire the water heater and you're going to burn up the elements that are inside. So let's go get the water back on, come back in, and get all the air out of the water heater. All right, here we are. Remember, after turning off any water system, when you go to turn the water back on, make sure you turn it on slowly. You do not want to cavitate the pipe or break up any loose debris that might be in the pipe. And also it keeps from hammering any fittings or any fixtures when you're turning it on. So we're going to slowly turn the water back on. All right. Well, there's not a lot of air in the system. I didn't hear any rushing water. All right, back inside to get the air out of the water heater. Okay, now that we have the water back on, here we are back inside with the water heater. We're going to slowly, all the faucets are off, we're going to slowly turn the water on to make sure we don't have any leaks. Again, just like with outside, you want to turn the water on slowly. And you can hear it when it's full. Oh, done. Okay, now we are fully on. The best way to check for water leaks, I found, is not visually by just looking, but by using your fingers. Because when I check the joints, there's nothing there. There's water here on the heater, but you can see how easily and visibly the water shows up. So with a dry finger, I'm going to run around on my joints. Now be careful for any metal burrs or anything to that effect so you don't get a splinter. Not feeling anything. All right, so let's go ahead and come over to the tub. And the reason I like using the tub to let the air out of the water heater system is because the tub doesn't come with an aerator on it. If I were to use a sink that has an aerator on the end of it, it can get clogged up with any debris that might have come loose when you've turned the water back on in the water heater. So anyway, here we go. All right, well, let's go ahead and turn on the lavatory faucet. Oh, there's your air. And just to reassure and double check, I'm going to go ahead and turn on another faucet. Got a good solid stream going there. All right, awesome. Okay, now we need to go ahead and adjust the water heater temperature on the elements, since this is electric, and on the thermostats to a temperature of 140 degrees. You see our power is still off. Please ensure that your power's off. It would make for a very bad day if it wasn't. All right. Some heaters will come with one element, some will come with two. This one here has two. Now, when doing this, whatever you set your top thermostat to, you also want to ensure that you set the bottom one to the same temperature. So they're both operating on the same setting. I'm going to say that's our 140 mark right there. That's pretty close. So let's go ahead and close this back up. Boom. There we go. Next step, let's go turn the power back on. Oh, that up. Sure it's closed. Okay, now we have the power back on. Next, we need to adjust the temperature. You back this nut out to the left, it will not come out, and use the Allen key provided with the Tank Booster Pro. Counterclockwise is to increase the heat, clockwise is to decrease it. Now, in order to adjust properly, we need to make sure we have running water through the temperature gauge. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the tub and run the tub right now. You see the gauge coming up. Sometimes I like to tap on the gauge to make sure it's jumping correctly. And there we are at our desired temperature. So this might take a minute to ensure that it's adjusted properly. What we do not want to do is have it increase past 120. With the tub running and the water running, we need to make sure we stay at a constant 120. Alright, now we've finished the Tank Booster Pro installation with some flexible water lines. Took me about an hour to do it. It's time to pack up and move on to the next job.